You don't want 1 million views. I know that sounds mad. Everyone's chasing views, right? The algorithm, the reach, the virality. But if you're a high ticket service professional, if you're an IFA, an accountant, a consultant, 1 million views actually is a nightmare, because 1 million views means 1,000 unqualified inquiries. It means your calendar filled with pick your brain type calls from people who really can't afford your retainer. It means you're spending 20 hours a week saying no to people who are never going to buy. Now, this concept, this idea of filtering your audience isn't mine. It comes from a YouTuber called Ed Lawrence. He calls it whiskey versus Coke, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to add my own little spin to it because I've spent 28 years in broadcast. Because here's the problem. A lot of professionals think the goal is to reach just as many people as possible. More views, more engagement, more followers. But let's be honest, that's the wrong metric. If you're selling, for example, a $5,000 retainer, you don't need 1 million people to see your video. You need 50 of the right people to see it, and you need 5 of them to book a call. That's it. So if your video strategy is designed to go viral, you're building the wrong machine. You need a filter rather than a megaphone. So in this video, I'm going to show you Ed Lawrence's whiskey versus Coke framework and why it's the most important concept in high ticket video marketing. I'm going to share my broadcast filtering system, how we used to repel time wasters on £100,000 productions without ever being rude to them, and the exact phrase you can add to your next video to immediately filter out the pick your brain crowd. Quick bit of context, I've worked on Strictly Come Dancing, Britain's Got Talent, Netflix stuff, tight budgets, tight deadlines, zero tolerance for people who aren't serious about what they're doing. And that same filtering mentality, it works for video marketing. So let me show you how. And listen, if you're sat there now thinking, okay, but how do I actually know which videos to make for my niche? I've built something for that. It's called the Video Scorecard. It's a short diagnostic. It takes a couple of minutes and it does the heavy lifting before we've even spoken. It asks which path fits your business, done for you production or DIY training. If you're in a regulated industry like financial services, it factors in your compliance setup straight away. So by the end, you'll know exactly where to start. It takes the guesswork out of it. The link to that is in the description, so make sure you grab that after watching this video. Okay, let's get to it. So Ed Lawrence's concept, he says there are 2 types of audiences, Coke drinkers and whiskey drinkers. Coke drinkers want fast, free, easy. They're scrolling their mobiles for quick tips. They want the 3 hacks to grow your business or the 5 things successful people do before breakfast. They're not bad people, they're just not necessarily your client, because Coke drinkers don't buy high ticket services. Ultimately, they don't value depth. They don't want to invest. They just want the shortcut. However, with whiskey drinkers, it's totally different. They're looking for expertise. They're willing to sit through a 10 or 15-minute video that explains the nuances of pension wrappers or inheritance tax planning. They value experience over hacks. They're not looking for free, they're looking for right. And if you're an IFA, an accountant, a wealth manager, your ideal client is a whiskey drinker. But here's the trap. Most professionals are actually making content for Coke drinkers because Coke drinker content is easy, it's shorter, it's punchier, it gets more likes, but it brings you the wrong leads. So the question is, how do you repel the Coke drinkers and attract the whiskey drinkers? You build friction into your videos. So let me give you an example from the broadcast world. When I was working on live TV, there was a process, a methodical step-by-step system of how you rigged the equipment before the camera operators even walked in. As a camera assistant, you'd make sure everything was exactly where it needed to be. Script card holder, script light, pencil for taking notes. And then as an operator, you'd prepare during the rehearsal. You'd make notes about where you needed to be at what point, when it was safe to repo, your position relative to other cameras, cues for when you could move, like when the host moved position or when they said a certain line. All of that was ingrained, because if you didn't know that process, you slowed everyone down. And on live TV, there's no room for that. You cannot be the weak link in a live broadcast. And that process itself filtered people out. Fast forward to when I started my own video business, I was desperate. I took, frankly, any work. And I'll be honest, a lot of that work was brutal. You'd come back from a shoot with clients who had Hollywood expectations, but a Chorleywood budget. They wanted the moon on a stick, but they just didn't want to pay for it. So you're constantly not meeting their expectations, which is massively demoralizing because you know that you can deliver, but you're not being given the budget to get the kit or the people you need to deliver what they actually want. And these are the same clients who request hundreds of amendments in the edit. And those are the jobs that turn into the nightmare gifts that we relentlessly keep on giving. The ones that didn't bring in much revenue, but you end up spending 10 times longer than they're paying you for just to get that job off your desk. And there's a big lesson in that. You have to be okay being specific about your price point, about what you're comfortable working for, because there's always going to be someone cheaper than you. And I've learned the hard way that you cannot differentiate on price. That is just a race to the bottom. You differentiate on the value that you add and the experience that you provide as people work with you. So when I stopped trying to be the affordable option and started being the we only work with serious clients who value this properly, the nightmare clients disappeared. The tire kickers stopped emailing, and the clients who understood the value, the ones who were willing to invest properly, they started booking. That's the filter. Being specific about your process and your price repels the people who are never going to value your work anyway. So here's how you apply this to your videos. You build in what's called technical friction. That means you don't dumb it down. You don't try to make it accessible for everyone. You talk like an expert to other experts. For example, if you're an IFA making a video about pension planning, don't start with something like, oh, pensions can be confusing, because that is coke drinker language. Start with, if you're a higher rate taxpayer with more than $500,000 in pension assets, there's a specific wrapper strategy that could save you $60,000 in inheritance tax. Let me walk you through it. Do you see the difference? The first version basically attracts everyone, including the people that will never hire you. And the second version repels the coke drinkers because they hear higher rate taxpayer and $500,000 in pension assets and they think, well, that's not me. But the whiskey drinkers, they lean in because you're speaking their language. Another example could be if you're a video strategist like me, I shouldn't be saying things like video marketing is so important for your business. I should be saying things like, if you're running a high trust service business with a minimum retainer of £3,000 per month, video is the fastest way to fill your pipeline without cold outreach. But it only works if you're filtering for the right clients. Let me show you how. Boom, that's the filter. The people who aren't running high trust business, well, they'll just click away. The people who are, they think, this guy gets it. That's how, over time, you build a whiskey drinker audience. Okay, so here's what you do. In your next video or your next LinkedIn post or your next bit of content, add one brutally honest line about who you don't want to work with. Not in a rude way, just be honest. So an example might be, this strategy doesn't work if you're just starting out. You need at least 2 years in business and a proven service before this makes sense. If you're looking for a quick fix, this isn't it. This is a 6-month build. If you need results next week, I'm not your guy. Or something like, I only work with regulated professionals. If you're not in financial services, accountancy or legal, this process won't fit your compliance setup. You see what that does? It tells the coke drinkers, this isn't for you. But it tells the whiskey drinkers, this person knows exactly who they serve. They're not trying to be everything to everyone. They are a specialist. And specialists charge more because they're selective. So just be honest, be specific, and watch the quality of your inquiries go up. And by the way, if you're thinking, right, I need to get specific about my niche, but I don't actually know which videos to make yet, that is what the scorecard process solves. It asks you to define your quarterly budgets and your compliance setup and your most important win within the next 30 days. And then, if I can help you, we set up a call where we talk about the next few videos you can make. It takes a couple of minutes, it's free, and the link for that is in the description. Okay, so you've filtered the clients. You know how to repel the coke drinkers and attract those lovely whiskey drinkers. But here's the thing, none of that matters if you sound like rubbish. Because, and this is something I have definitely learned in 28 years of broadcast TV and 5 or 6 years of doing this kind of thing by myself, sound is 70% of what we can see. I know that sounds backwards, but it's true. A viewer will forgive a slightly blurry image. They'll forgive slightly dodgy lighting. They'll even forgive maybe a slightly distracting background, but they'll never forgive bad sound. If your audio is echoey, if there's a fridge humming in the background, if your voice sounds thin and tinny, if they can't hear you properly, they're gone. They don't trust you. So in the next video, I'm breaking down the invisible trust signal that a lot of professionals completely miss. And I'm going to show you the $20 fix that makes you sound like you're in a broadcast studio, even if you're filming in your spare bedroom. So make sure you catch up with that next, because it's the difference between sounding like an amateur and sounding like an authority. Okay, I hope you got loads of value from that. If you're seeing how filtering your audience is actually more valuable than reaching everyone, definitely hit subscribe, because the next series, called the Broadcast Essentials, is all about the technical side of things. The sound, the lighting, the editing, the stuff that separates the pros from the wannabes. And if you're ready to get specific about your video strategy, whether that's done for you production or DIY training, make sure you just do the scorecard. It takes a couple of minutes. It'll tell you exactly where to start based on your budget, your compliance setup, and your goals for the next 30 days. The link to that is in the description. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.